From Nairobi, Kenya, you're listening to the Kuza Podcast, brought to you by kuza.com.
Welcome once again to Kuza Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Now, you all know, kama kawaida, tunawaletea mazungumzo ambayo yanawajenga roho. Today's conversation that is going to build your heart is matters leadership. Are you a leader? Now, I'm not talking about a leader because of position. Are you a leader? Do you consider yourself a leader? Who is a leader anyway? Well, I have a group of fellas here, some two gentlemen that are going to be helping us to break it down. But we want to particularly look at the man Mudha. Man, how do you guys from the Murima pull that off? Mudha. How did Musa S.A. become T.H.? Mudha. But we're talking about Mudha's leadership today. Yani Moses, for those of us who have gone to international schools. And we want to look at what did Moses do in his leadership styles. How did he handle it? And what can we glean from it? And so either you are a positional leader, you have a position in church or whatever it is, or you're somebody who is aspiring to take front line in matters, helping people do things, blah, blah, blah. You're a leader in your own regard. And so this conversation is important for you, right? Okay, so tune in as we just break it all down. What can we get from Moses' leadership? And so, gentlemen, asanteni sana for being here with us today. We have Matt Elmo, the Muzungu from America. Yeah, who is
who says Mudha?
Mudha. Adoa Mushie.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever heard.
Adoa Mushie.
See,
Adoa Nyok.
I've not heard anybody say Mudha.
Mudha. Yeah, those are guys from
the one that really, speaking of Moses, is the one that always makes me laugh is how people say Pharaoh. We say Pharaoh.
No, how do you pull up?
Pharaoh.
See, that's the problem with you guys Americans sometimes, right? And you guys, I think you guys and Kikuyus, you have a lot of explanation to do. For instance, right? So you all say Pharaoh. Explain. How do you say Pharaoh? And it is P-H-A-R-A-O. Pharaoh. Now, these guys from Central, you listen to them and then they're going to somebody, they are going for a burial and say, oh, the funeral. They don't say funeral. The funeral. I'm
like for example, the PH sound in English is a F sound. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's like the word Philadelphia, right? That's PH.
Okay.
Yeah. So then and then air, but anyways, whatever, it doesn't matter. One of the issues I think I have is people take the Swahili vowel sounds and they now bring them over into English words. It's like the same rules always apply, for them, where you pronounce every letter and every word.
If I'm going to call Pharaoh in Kenya, man, I'm not going to just call him Pharaoh because it's Swahili background. And of course, the other person that is in the set is truly yours, Deacon Edgar.
Yes.
Mwenyewe. When you are a fellow. Allow. Just in the next 30 seconds, how do you guys pull it off? Funeral.
He explains.
Oh man, it's a miracle.
Pronounce funeral.
How do you say it again?
Funeral.
It's
not funeral. They just can't say funeral. Just say funeral. Like funeral. What?
I can't do that.
What?
I don't know. I can't tell you.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining in today. What can we glean from Moses' leadership? That's what you're looking at. And I hope that you guys are going to be able to help those guys tuning in to elewe. So then we see biblically, I think we have good examples. I know mostly when we talk about leadership, we'll give you mostly worldly examples and all those things. But it's also important to know that even in the Bible, there are people that have led well, and we can glean from them. So let me start with the deacon, the deacon himself, Moses. Give us a background. Who is Moses? Mudha.
Musa. Moses was born in Egypt in around the 1500 there, BC there. He was born to Amram and Jochebed, or Jocheb. Sometimes there's an E or an A. It depends.
Bro, let me just tell you, when this other brother sitting next to you starts saying that name, you hear him say Jochebed.
So there's an...
I wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't say that one. Oh, fantastic. Finally, you guys have one thing right. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so he was born to Amram and Jochebed.
Right.
But back then, there was an edict that Pharaoh had put in place where all Hebrew boys born were to be killed.
Okay.
And so Amram and Jochebed had raised him up for about 3 months. But then because of that edict, it became, they were like, how can we do this? And so, so the idea was they made a reed, sort of box of papyrus reeds, put him in there and put him into the river Nile.
Right.
And by God's providence, it just happened that he landed next to Pharaoh's daughter. So someone among Pharaoh's daughter's servants saw him and called her to see the the reed basket. And once opening it, Moses was in there. And so after that, he grows up in Pharaoh's house. Imagine that. This is a boy who was supposed to be dead. Now he's Prince of Egypt.
But I think one of the miracles in him of being on the river Nile is that it's a crocodile-infested river.
That is true.
Survived.
Survived.
That's a miracle.
That is true. So he grew up in Egypt for around 40 years. He even seemingly became influential because when he killed the Egyptian man, he was I think supervising something. So he was out there supervising something. And so he saw an Egyptian harassing a Hebrew. And so as a result of this, he killed him. And because of killing him, he thought that no one knew at first. Then the next day, he saw 2 Hebrews fighting and went to them and told them, "Can you stop?" And they were like, "Are you going to?" Yeah, you are brothers. And they were like, "Are you going to kill us as you killed the Egyptian man?" And so he knew he had been found out. And so he ran away to and landed in Midian, where he married Zipporah, his wife, and had 2 sons. And then in Midian, he became a shepherd under his father-in-law Jethro. And then in Exodus 3, we have his call from God. He was shepherding, and then he sees a burning bush. He comes close to it. He's like, "Why is this bush burning?" And it's not completely consumed by the fire. And then God tells him, "Do not come closer, for you are standing on holy ground." And then he's commissioned to be the person, to be the deliverer of the Israelites from Pharaoh's hand. But as we see, there are a lot. He makes a lot of excuses before that. But God answers all his excuses. And then he goes to Egypt, and we know what he does, which is something we'll explain further.
Fantastic. Now, for those of us who are tuning in, that is, what is that? That is Biblical Theology 101, right? Now, if you've never read the book of Exodus, we've just done a very good crunch of the first several chapters. Okay, now you need to go and do the rest. So, in fact, our conversation today talks the idea, we'll see a little bit of Exodus in crunches. But yeah, so that is, so that's Moses, right? He's an interesting guy. He's there in Pharaoh's courts. He's out. He's killed somebody. He's out in the wilderness. Interesting that you actually get a beautiful girl in the wilderness. Anyway, so he gets a wife in the wilderness there, and marries. And so I guess at that point in time, then we can say that Moses' journey begins. Or Mark, what do you think? Where would you say that Moses' leadership journey began?
I mean, really, I think you start to see, like, obviously he was a misguided leader in some ways, in the sense of he had a lot of passion, right? To like, these are my people, these are the Israelites. And like for him, it's like his passion overwhelmed to the point that he kills now some Egyptians, right? He goes in and just tries to cover them up by burying them in the sand. But like, so his passion was there, but sometimes passion lacks wisdom. And so we can see that Moses now kind of goes away for 40 years, in Midian. He just does, God just has him lead sheep, right? So he's basically leading sheep around, but one day he's going to lead people around, right? And so I think God takes him in through these steps of kind of cooling off for about 40 years. I'm assuming there's some humility and things that go on in Moses' life. In fact, if you don't mind me jumping ahead,
in fact, there's something that you said just before you jump ahead. You said, sometimes passion lacks wisdom.
It does.
Yeah. I mean, just speaking to that, probably somebody that is probably watching. What is that like for us today?
I think sometimes if you just have a lot of passion, like I remember when I was younger, I would come back from like a youth camp at church,
right,
And I remember at the youth camp, like when we were singing worship songs, it was with like our full heart, like really a lot of passion there.
Yeah.
Now I come back to church and we're singing like the same worship song, right?
This is like, wow.
And then you see people just kind of like, checking their watches and, just kind of yawning and not really like singing or paying attention. And I would just start to become angry. What is wrong with you people? Don't you realize there's a great God? And I would just be, and I could say some things that were harsh towards, other people
Allah.
in church.
Allah.
Right. Yeah. And so I had passion, but it was lacking wisdom, on some of those circumstances and situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Moses was probably caught up into that to the point now he does something where he goes and kills somebody.
Yeah.
But obviously I think the process of going through now, the tending the sheep and just doing the mundane task, there's a way now that he was kind of humbled through that.
All right.
And to the point now, so now to the point now we can see even God calls him the humblest man on earth in Numbers 12, verse 3. Yeah. Some versions will say the meekest man on earth, but it's kind of the same idea there.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to state, like, in the context of this Numbers 12, where we talks about Moses being meek, his sister Miriam and his brother Aaron are like saying, like, why is Moses so special? God's also spoken through us. What makes him to be the quote, the leader? What's the big deal?
Yeah. We can also do this.
Yes. And then now the Bible says the Lord heard their grumbling, their complaining. And then he basically says to other prophets, I speak to them through visions and dreams, but I speak to Moses face to face. And then
like God just slapped him, just like,
Yes. And then on top of that too, like Moses is hearing these grumblings and complaining and trying to stir the Israelites up against Moses. He hears all this. Moses says nothing. And then now, because of Miriam's the one who kind of started it, now God allows her to have leprosy. And Moses could have just, said, well, that's what you deserve. Serves you right. You touched the Lord's anointed, right? Or whatever. He could say something like that, but instead, Moses immediately prays for God, Lord, please, don't let this happen. Forgive her, basically, right?
Doctrine, Mr. Pastor, Pastor, whoever you are, Mr. Leader, doctrine. You do not touch the Lord's anointed.
So,
be humble.
So basically, Moses was humble enough to pray essentially for at that time, as his sister, but she was behaving like an enemy. So he treats her, he basically forgives her. He's humble enough to pray for her. So we can really see the meekness of, or the humility of his wisdom.
Somebody said on that one that, humility is confidence rightly placed.
Mm-hmm.
It
is.
I mean, so then you have ability to retaliate, to hit back.
Yes, but you don't. He doesn't. And so again, a good leader is someone who's going to be humble. Right? Even when someone's treating you badly, doing well, he still is looking out for the good of Miriam. He's still praying for her. He still wants the best for her. He's not about his pride of, umegusa mimi, you've messed with me. But instead, he's not trying to look for the downfall of his quote unquote enemies. But instead, a good leader is someone who is meek and humble. James even talks about the meekness of wisdom. So wisdom is expressed through this meekness, this humility that we can see through Moses.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So humility. That's one thing that Moses exhibited. And I think as people are learning to lead, that's a crucial one. We don't always have to flex our muscles, right? Sometimes just letting God do things is actually a good sign that you're humble. Edgar, what else do we glean from Moses' leadership style? Number one, said he was a humble guy.
Yeah. Even just before even I get to mine, to emphasize a bit on what Matt said, you have this guy, Moses. He was the most humble guy of any, because that's the idea Numbers paints, of anyone in the known universe. And this is in spite. If there was anyone who had reason to say, touch not the Lord's anointed, it was Moses. He was mediator of a covenant. He was the deliverer of the Israelites. He was essentially, before Aaron was instituted, he received the tablets.
He saw God's back.
I know.
He wrote 5 books of the Bible.
Essentially, the seminal books of the Bible are written by him. the law books of the Bible are the books of the law.
They don't know God's voice.
Yeah, it's Moses, and that's why even Hebrews uses Moses and as one of the main comparisons, because he was everything Jesus was. He did some of the roles that Jesus did, and so we even get another way that Moses, just outside of humility, is that he was guided by God's vision. He didn't just do this randomly. He wasn't like, I'm the guy, I'll chart my own path.
Right.
He actually learned from his mistakes. And like in Egypt, where he saw the best way to do this is kill this Egyptian. Now in Midian, when God calls him at Mount Sinai, or rather, when he calls him, it's a different Moses, a more humble Moses, a Moses who had tended to sheep, been married and had children. So he knew the challenges there. He had been humbled in a sense.
Right.
And now when God calls him, we see that he's made humble to the point that he willingly chooses to do God's work. Right. He willingly sets, even though he had complaints, we'll get there. He had many complaints that he could give, but what he did was what God set him out to do.
Right.
That when God told him, "Do not come close, for what you are standing on is holy ground."
Right.
He removes his shoes.
Yes.
And he adheres to God's command.
Right.
Then he hears God's plea that he has seen the affliction of his people and wants to send him and listens to him. He just, before he even says anything about his misgivings or shortcomings, he listens to God's instructions. And this Exodus 3:1-22 is what guides his life as the deliverer of Israel. It's not after that. Actually, the one time that Moses did not do what God wanted him to do is what led him not to go into Canaan.
Yeah, imagine.
Because this was a man so set apart, so as we've said, he was everything.
Exclusive.
He was an exclusive guy. But this one thing was enough to bring him down, because it was the one time he chose to go against God's will and do his own thing.
That's harsh, man. All right, that's interesting. Now, if you're tuning in and you're listening to these things, if you are either in a position of leadership or you are aspiring and desiring to engage with people in all these things and guiding people, say a leader is basically somebody who is moving people from one place to another or to a certain goal. And that is Moses. And we're looking at him and saying that, yes, he was a humble guy. We are saying that his background was quite interesting, and God just started working through him from the time that he's putting that Nile into Pharaoh's court or Pharaoh, and the whole thing. And he's also guided by God's vision. Notice people that, even as Edgar is reminding us, that the only time that this guy refused to do God's bidding, it costed him Canaan, that's interesting. Now, whoever you are, those are things that you need to glean. Secondly, www.kuzaapp.com. Have you ever heard of that website before? Yeah, all right. If you've never done, here it is right now, www.kuzaapp.com. That's what you want to visit, and you'll get what? You'll get a lot of resources, information that is going to help you to grow in the Lord, things that are going to help you to grow in your devotional life. Questions are answered there, probably some of them that you have been crossing your mind and thinking, now how do I respond to this? But also, there is a very, 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 very crucial clip that you need to watch right there. Top right corner of that website is a button written "Receive Christ," and that's important for you. Why? Because it's a good presentation of the gospel. Right now, if you've not understood the gospel before nicely, kindly click, listen to it. If you have understood it and you are not so sure how to share with people, kindly click and listen to it. If you need to be reminded about the gospel, kindly click and watch. That's going to be nice. 2 or 3. Yes, if you have a smartphone, download the Kuza app. Kuza app is there. The only Kenyan devotional app by Kenyans for Kenyans, well, for East Africans and all. But download it and it's going to be good for you. Devotions that are going to help you in your quiet time and your relationship with the Lord. Hapo sawa? Kama da. All right, fantastic. So, tuendelee na hii shughuli. Tuko karibu kumalizia. So, tumesema vitu mbili. We've said about humility, and you've said we've painted a picture with the background of Moses. He's guided by God's vision. Matt, what else do we glean from Moses' leadership?
One thing I think is really important is that he really was dependent upon God's empowerment.
Right.
Like at the very beginning, he basically gives kind of excuses like, I don't know if I can lead these people well. I can't speak well. I can't do some of these things well.
Yeah.
And then God basically says, listen, you have a staff in your hand, throw it on the ground. It became a snake,
Right.
Suddenly.
Yeah.
We know that that's the staff that he stuck in the Red Sea, and then it parted.
Mhm.
That's the staff that he touched the rock with, and water came pouring from it.
The one that did all these other miracles in Egypt.
Yeah, there's tons of miracles basically that he just kind of used and lift up his staff, and sort plagues and other things would come about.
Mhm.
So God just used basically what Moses had.
Right.
Moses had to basically have faith that God can do this, right? He kind of
Right.
surrendered to those sorts of things.
Mhm.
Also, we know too that Moses realized his shortcomings.
Mm.
I can't speak well.
Yeah.
We think he was a stammerer, and
Right,
so he
right.
really probably struggled with that. And God said, "Well, fine, then I'm going to give you. I'm the one who created mouths. What is the problem with this? I'll give you
Yeah.
Aaron to speak on your behalf if you need
Right.
to."
Right.
And so I think him kind of now just depending upon God's power, like, all right, I'm trusting God with this staff. I will go and say, what you tell me to do.
Yeah.
He really had to trust in the Lord's power.
Mhm.
It wasn't easy at all for Moses. Even
Mhm.
walking in Egypt, he can almost have this mindset that he just walks in and just bust open the door into, Pharaoh's court and says,
Right.
let me tell you something. I'm here to free the people.
Yeah.
But even Moses goes in and basically tells the Israelites, hey, I'm here to, God's going to deliver you. And they're like, well, who are you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Type of thing. And they didn't really believe him at first, but Moses had to really, again, depend on the empowerment of God
Right,
and
right,
trust in
right.
him. And I think it's a good quality for a leader.
Mhm.
We need to trust in the Lord. And so if you go in the New Testament,
Yeah.
we're basically told to rely on the grace of God,
Right.
right? The strength of God. And so we have faith that God can now empower me to do certain things. That's a good quality for a leader to have.
Interesting. Trust in the Lord. Man, crucial one. Don't do things. I mean, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 then comes to mind right there, Trust in the Lord with all your heart, do not depend on your understanding. And again, in Moses' life, the only time he does depend on his own understanding, his path is crooked.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, crooked completely. I mean, he just misses out on Canaan, right? I mean, okay, let's continue building, Edgar. Let's just continue building and gleaning a lot more from this dude called Moses. Yes.
Another thing he did so well, aside from the one mishap,
Yeah.
is that he spoke God's instructions fully.
He spoke instructions, right?
That when he presents himself to the Israelites, he doesn't present himself as Martha said, doesn't present himself as the guy who is doing this.
Yeah, listen to me. I've come to tell you guys this is what I'm
Yeah.
going to do now. Keep quiet and listen. Yeah.
He says, he used to say, thus says the Lord God. He used to say, the Lord has said to me. He wouldn't say that, no, I'm the one who is saying this, so follow me. He trusted in the Lord and spoke whatever he said.
Right.
And did, not even just spoke it, did whatever he said. And so that just ties in neatly with him being dependent on the power of God.
Right.
That he did not trust in himself. And that's even how he began. We see Exodus 5:1.
Yeah.
He says, thus says the Lord God of Israel. That's what he said every time he came to Pharaoh.
Right.
Thus says the Lord God of Israel.
Yeah.
And Pharaoh never listened. And as a result, God was always vindicated through what Moses said, because Moses did what he ought to do.
Why is that important today, especially now? Moses did that, but why is that important today that we learn to just, as leaders, then speak or say that which, especially in the Christian circles, that which God is why is that important for us?
Because I'll just even quote what you just said, Proverbs 3, 5-6. Trust in the Lord, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, for he'll make your path straight. That is a very key verse for any leader to have.
Right.
That if you lean on your own understanding, we see where that gets you.
Right.
And especially you as a leader, much is expected of you. The reason Moses did not enter Canaan is, I remember reading somewhere, is that if any random Israel did what Moses did, God wouldn't have been as harsh as he was to Moses. The reason he was harsher to Moses was because Moses was this set apart guy. He was the mediator. He was the leader of the Israelites, their deliverer. And so him not heeding God's instructions meant that these people would have a reason. They'll be like, I don't need to heed God's instructions because look at that guy. He didn't. What is the point of me doing it?
That's
and so he was truly set apart. And because of that, if you lead by your own understanding,
right,
that's where you fall.
Man, probably no wonder the Bible says that leaders will be judged harshly.
Yeah.
That's scary, man. So we are better off than just being the random dudes in the congregation, not leaders.
Yeah, that's why James. That's why James says
I tell you
in James 3:1.
But at the same time, too,
yeah,
Moses saw the back of God. Moses talked to God face to face.
he did.
Moses, had all this amazing encounters with the Lord.
Is that some wave of grace right there, Matt?
He spends 40 days on the mountain with God. I mean, and I honestly think, you think 40 days without food, up there and most likely without water too. And then
it's the mountain, it's up there.
And the thing I think about that with Moses too is he probably wasn't like, oh, I'm hungry. I think he was just so in awe of God that he doesn't even think about eating or drinking. And also too, remember Moses comes back from the Mount of Transfiguration with Jesus in the New Testament.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy had this incredible relationship. So being a leader is hard, but at the same time,
Rewarding.
Wow, the fellowship that he had with the Lord is incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, quite.
I mean, think of us. Marvin, can you imagine sticking a stick in the Red Sea and it parts?
Do you know where I would want to put that stick?
Oh my, yeah.
Or the Nile.
In this country of ours, I just say, Lord, change things, part the ways.
But I mean, seriously, I just can't imagine. Or you just basically stick your staff in the air.
Those are not normal occurrences.
No.
It's not just a random thing with the money. Hey, guys, let's go. And then,
I just think the overwhelming things that Moses would have seen. It was incredible.
Interesting. Matt, wrap it up. One last thing that you want to throw in right there that you can glean from.
I think the last thing I just want to throw in is there's a whole, Marvin, I got 30 points here on the leadership of Moses, and there's no way I could just choose.
All right,
one.
At this point in time, if you are interested, you can give you Matt Elmo's email address and then he can forward you some of these things. 30 points. We definitely do not.
Let me just say this real quick.
Yes.
One was, you think about, for example, in Exodus 3:1 and 2, Moses basically kept the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro.
Right.
And he led the flock around, just in the wilderness. That's basically what he did for 40 years.
Right.
He was really faithful with the small things. And now God lifts him up to take care of the big things.
Right.
And then also another one I think I really want to point out real fast.
He was faithful with the small things.
Very faithful. So you be faithful with small things. Right now you may not be a leader, but be faithful with the small things, and then you can be trusted with more. And also too, in Exodus 18, whenever now Moses has more, right? He's now overwhelmed with all the issues and needs of these probably 2 million Israelites coming to him nonstop, and he's having to make judgments and deal with all kinds of stuff. He becomes overwhelmed, and his father-in-law, Jethro, comes to him and says, you need to delegate. Basically, you need to have leaders of 50s, leaders of hundreds, etc. And so we learn that leaders delegate.
Right.
They need to now pass on some responsibility to other people.
Interesting.
So again, there's more we could say, but I think those are some good things to learn from the life of Moses.
Wrap it up. Parting shot for any person that's a wannabe leader or leader already.
I'll just quote when in the Hall of Fame in Hebrews 11, when Moses is mentioned, he's mentioned for forsaking the pleasures of the world. For the sake of Christ. Okay. And that is something a leader who seeks to glorify God anyway, needs to do. He needs to forsake the pleasures of the world for the glory of Christ. But even more than that, as Martha said, there is joy in this, in that as we see from the lives of Moses was buried by God. Imagine that. God buried Moses. That's the privilege he had because of that set apart nature. And for us, for any leader now, if you hold fast to Christ, there is the hope that, yes, you'll give an account for everyone who was put under your care, but also you'll be rewarded by being shown, because you've placed, this is your fruit you proclaimed truth and they came
Right.
because of your work, and here they are.
Fantastic.
Rejoice in this. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, matter say there's 30 and going and counting. All right. There's a lot more that you can glean from the life of Moses, but we just mentioned a few. All right. Now, as leaders, we have a lot to learn in scripture. And so go and get these Bible characters and see how God walked with them and worked with them, and see how you can, just improve your own leadership style. Moses is an amazing leader, man. I mean, and we have said his humility. He was guided with God's vision. He always fully spoke God's instructions and many more. And I pray that we'll find a lot of meaning and value in that. So once you go and study the book of, Moses, basically Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, study those books and hear and see how God guided him through. Pick a few things that are going to help you in your leadership role. www.kuza.app.com. That's what you need to do. That's what you need to be visiting. Kuza app is the app that needs to be on your phone. Quick dial and like, share, comment, repeat. That's what you need to do. Until we meet again. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Kuza podcast. Brought to you by kuzaapp.com, an online ministry with blogs, videos, podcasts, and a mobile app. Make sure to subscribe to get more content to help you grow spiritually.